In this episode of Locked On Capitals, the Washington Capitals sign a new goaltender to an entry-level deal. Was Lars Eller's hit a dirty hit on Carolina? He thinks so. And Alan May weighs in on what he thinks the future of fighting in the NHL should be. Locked On Capitals starts right now.
Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome in to this episode of Locked On Capitals. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. My name is Dan Holme. I host this podcast for Locked On Capitals. I want to thank you for making this your first listen or view of the day. As always, this podcast is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. So if you want to see how this podcast is done, head over to YouTube. And then while you're there, hit the follow or subscribe button there. That way you will know when the new videos are available as well. All right, in this episode, we are going to talk about that. The Washington Capitals signed a new netminder. It's kind of a future for the Washington Capitals, but they signed an entry-level contract nonetheless. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about Lars Eller's hit against Carolina. Carolina thinks it's a dirty hit. What do you guys think? And then in the final segment, we will talk about what Alan May thinks the future of fighting in the NHL should be. Yes, the former tough guy in the NHL for the Washington Capitals weighs in on what he thinks the future of fighting in the NHL should be. It's going to be interesting. You'll want to stick around. All right, in this first segment, we're going to talk about that. The Washington Capitals have, in fact, signed an entry-level contract for a goaltender. The Capitals have signed goaltender Clay Stevenson to a 2-year entry-level deal contract beginning next season. Stevenson's contract will carry an average annual value of $855,000. And we talked about that earlier in the week about them signing a new goaltender, but they made it official today, and they actually put pen to paper, and we will have a new goaltender for the Washington Capitals next season, whether it be in Hershey or in the ECHL Stingrays. But in the pipeline, the Washington Capitals will continue to have really great goaltender depth. And that is great news. The Washington Capitals have signed goaltender Clay Stevenson to a 2-year entry-level deal. Contract beginning, Senior Vice President and General Manager Brian McClellan announced today. Stevenson's contract will carry an average annual value of $855,000. Stevenson, 23, posted a record of 6-4-2 with 2 shutouts, a 2.70 goals against average, and a .922 save percentage in his sophomore season at Dartmouth College of the Eastern College Athletic Conference. The 6'4", 195-pound goaltender posted a save percentage above .900 in all 23 games this season, and his .922 save percentage was tied for the second in the ECAC. His team in British Columbia native was named to the ECAC All-Rookie Team and the ECAC Third All-Star Team. Stevenson did not play for Dartmouth during his freshman season due to COVID-19 pandemic, and just looking at those statistics, it looks like they have another really great goaltender headed towards the Washington Capitals next season. And the Washington Capitals always have that pedigree of picking up great goaltenders. So you got to give it to the scouting department and the general manager for pulling the trigger on these guys and signing these young goaltenders to contracts. If you just look back historically on who the Washington Capitals have picked up, some great goaltenders. You got Grubauer in there, Braden Holtby, Phoenix Copley. I mean, that's just the more recent ones, but they always just seem to have a knack for finding real great netminders on this team. And this seems to continue in that fashion. Prior to joining Dartmouth College, Stevenson played in 3 seasons with Express in the British Columbia Hockey League. In his third and final season in 1920, Stevenson finished with a 32-2 record with 4 shutouts, a 1.77 goals against average, and a .936 save percentage, and led the team to the Ron Memorial Trophy presented to the BCHL's regular season champion. Stevenson was named the BCHL First Team All-Star, was honored at the BCHL's top goaltender after finishing the BCHL's top goals against average and top save percentage, and was given the Wally Forsland Trophy, presented to the BCHL's top goaltending duo. In 85 games, Stevenson finished with a 48-29-3 record with 6 shutouts, a 2.82 goals against average, and a .906 save percentage. So, like I say, just a really great signing for the Washington Capitals as they continue to stock the tank, if you will, for the AHL and ECHL teams, because you got to always kind of keep your eyes to the future. I know as of right now, we have Vitek Vanacek and Ilya Samsonov, but you never know what the future holds. There's always trades or guys get injured. There's just a lot that we don't know. But what the Capitals always do really well is they always have great netminders, either on the big team or down in their minor league system. So that is just really great news. And considering how some of the netminders have played this year, most notably Ilya Samsonov, it's good to kind of have your eye to the future because you don't know who you're going to ultimately go with. Considering how he has played, they have some talent down in their AHL and ECHL affiliate. They have Phoenix Copley and they have Zach Fucale. And I think that Zach Fucale is the one that's poised to make the big takeover for the Washington Capitals. In fact, I know it. Just seeing him play out there, it's just a matter of time before he plays on the big Washington Capitals team. I think his days in AHL Hershey are going to be numbered. I wouldn't be surprised if the Capitals make a big move in the offseason and either offload Ilya Samsonov. I think that that's who they would ultimately end up going with. As long as Vitek Vanacek continues to play at a top level, I think his job is safe here. But unless Ilya Samsonov can turn it around, I think that his days with the Washington Capitals will probably be numbered, and that will probably spell the end of his career with the Washington Capitals. What remains for Ilya Samsonov after this year is kind of undetermined. I guess he is kind of in control of his own fate, depending on how he plays. But his inconsistency this season throughout, and just kind of last season with, getting together with players in the offseason when they were told that they shouldn't be getting together. And then he got in that all-terrain vehicle accident, which I guess wasn't really his fault. But nonetheless, he's just had kind of inconsistent play. And I think that the Washington Capitals will ultimately end up moving on from Ilya Samsonov in the offseason. So that is great that they have some guys in the wings. In this article here, we're talking about Clay Stevenson, who is a ways out. Generally, they don't insert these guys right away into the lineup unless you're playing on a team that just has absolutely nothing in the goaltending department. Then they sometimes do that, but I think to enter Clay Stevenson in too early would be a mistake, but they do have some depth there, and the future in net looks really good for the Washington Capitals. Everyone should be really excited about that because that's what you need to have. You can have the greatest offense, defense in the world, but if you don't have solid net minding behind me, you're not going to go very far. If you look at the teams historically that have made runs for the Stanley Cup, even take a look at the Washington Capitals themselves. When they won it in 18-19, they had a great 1A and 1B goaltender situation in the form of Philip Grubauer and Braden Holtby. And the lines between them were pretty blurred. They both had their hot streaks. If you remember back in that season, Braden Holtby started to falter a little bit and Grubauer stepped in. And if Grubauer wasn't there, I don't think the Washington Capitals would have won the Stanley Cup. Ultimately, Braden Holtby's the one that gets all the praise, and he should. He played very well towards the end there, but let's not be a revisionist of what history was. Braden Holtby faltered towards the end of the season and into the playoffs, and that was up to Philip Grubauer to fill those shoes, and he did that. So tying that back all to this situation, you need a great starting goaltender and you need a great backup goaltender if you're going to do anything. And that's one of the things that's a bit of a cause of concern for me as the Capitals make their push for the playoffs is who is going to be their backup goaltender. We know it's Vitek going to be number one without question. We know that. But who is going to be the guy that's going to play if it's a back-to-back situation or, God forbid, if Vitek Vanacek gets injured again? If you remember last season, that's what happened. He played great hockey all season. He was one of the best netminders in the NHL. but then he had that injury, and that was it. And that was pretty much it for the Capitals in the playoffs. So that's what you're up against when you're at this level, is you have to have a great number one and number two, and you don't want to be floundering going, well, I guess I'm going to pull this guy up from AHL that I don't really know about, or this guy from ECHL. Those things should be taken care of by the time you make it to the playoffs. And as of this moment, I don't think that Brian McClellan has addressed that. And I don't think that anyone has. I think that they're just kind of resigned to the fact of just letting it go, and whatever it is, it is. If you think of, if you look at it, the pickups that they made, you look at Marcus Johansson, hindsight 2020, he got really outworked in that last game there. Was that the right decision to make? Should they have gone after Max Domi? I'm not so sure. We can't, this is all Monday morning quarterbacking here, but that's what I'm saying. Being prepared for the future, and don't sell the farm just for wins today. That would be the best thing that I could say. So after the break, we're going to talk about Lars Eller's hit against the Carolina Hurricanes. Was it a dirty hit? I watched it back a couple times. I don't believe it was, but you know who does think it was a dirty hit? The Carolina Hurricanes. We'll talk about that. But first, Built Bar. This is the time of year that I've pretty much given up on all my New Year's resolutions, but not this year. I'm sticking to my resolution to eat right thanks to Built Bar. It almost feels like it's not really a resolution because I actually enjoy eating them. Have you tried the Puffs? If you haven't, you're missing out on one of Built Bar's best tasting bars. Puffs are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy. They're not just a protein bar, they're a treat, and they're covered in 100% real chocolate. Puffs are a fan favorite with some incredible flavors. Yummy cinnamon churro, coconut marshmallow, banana cream pie. They're so good, and they're going to be your new favorite. All Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. That's the Puffs included, 100% chocolate. They're low calorie, high protein. Replace your candy bars with these. They are better. A typical candy bar can be anywhere from 200 to 300 calories. Ouch! Stick with your New Year's resolution, everyone, this year, and continue to eat right with Built Bar. Go to Built.com and scroll down to the macros chart. You'll be blown away. High protein, low calorie, high fiber. Most Built Bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Compared to the candy bars that you eat out there, most of those have 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. So, like I say, make good on your New Year's resolution. Go to Built.com, use promo code LOCK15 and get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. Thank you, Built. That's what you got to do in this. You got to keep eating healthy. It's not, it's too early in the season to be giving up on your New Year's resolution. All right. So in this next segment, like we talked about, we are going to talk about the hit on Lars Eller that he made on Jesperi Kotkaniemi. So the closing seconds of Monday's 6-1 loss, Capitals center Lars Eller made a hit on Carolina forward Jesperi Kotkaniemi. That's a tough one to say. That sent the latter to the ice. He circled back toward the half wall in the offensive zone and was unsuspecting when he took the hit from Eller, who was given a 2-minute charging penalty on the play with just 1.8 seconds left. Then he struggled to get back to the bench, unable to put much weight on his left leg. Carolina coach Rod Brind'Amour didn't know the extent of his injury immediately after the game, but commented that it wasn't good. And, that's what everyone thinks when they're, when you watch your team play, you think that it's a dirty hit. If it was something that one of his players did on the Washington Capitals, would he be thinking of that? Would he be thinking that? Would Rod Brind'Amour think that was a dirty hit? Go ahead and watch it back. It's on NHL.com, or, you can see it on the NHL network. I don't really believe it was a dirty hit. I think that, it was a situation where the Carolina Hurricanes were bringing a physical game, and I think that the Capitals kind of were feeling the pressure. So in turn, the Washington Capitals ratcheted up their physical game, as they should have. But that is what's being disputed here. The Hurricanes weren't happy by the play, which kept Kotkaniemi out of the lineup for a stretch of time, especially with a month left before the playoffs. I don't know what to say, Carolina forward Mantis Nekes says. For me, that's just so stupid. I don't know who hit him, but whoever it was, it's a 6-1 game, 1 second left. Eller does that. He tries to be a hero or whatever. I don't know. I have no words for that. It's just ridiculous. And is it really ridiculous? Carolina Hurricanes, you're in the first place. And I know that you're trying to protect all your players, as you go into the playoffs, but that's not the way it works. Take a look at the Washington Capitals as they've gone into the postseason. After the fact, you find out that many players were injured. Alex Ovechkin oftentimes plays through injuries, and other players that you hear. It's kind of this huge laundry list that you hear of different injuries that they sustained. So to think that you are going to be able to protect your players, even if it is 6-1, it's what are the Capitals just supposed to lay over and take it? No, the Capitals wanted to get back into this game. They wanted to make it close. I know that didn't fit the narrative that the Carolina Hurricanes were trying to send out there, but too bad. And too bad if they got a little messed up. This is hockey. If you don't want to be getting hit out there, you should pick a different sport. As most matchups this season have gone between the Hurricanes and Capitals, it was quarrelsome affair from start to finish that included a few post-whistle scrums and a fight between Tom Wilson and Brendan Smith in the third period. And that was another one out there where everyone is saying, hey, was that hit, that fight between Tom Wilson and Brendan Smith, was that the right thing to do? Didn't Tom Wilson know that he had some sort of skull injury? What is Tom Wilson supposed to do? Is he supposed to protect Brendan Smith from himself? He's a grown man. He wanted to fight. And if he has that poor judgment that he wants to enter into a fight with Tom Wilson, a guy that's known around the league as one of the best fighters out there, if not the best fighter, then you know what? You get what you get. And if you step up to Tom Wilson, you keep chirping him and you say that you want to, in fact, fight. And there's video out there. It's on Twitter. Go ahead and take a look. He wanted that fight, and he ended up getting it. He ended up getting his butt kicked, and too bad. Like they say, you play with fire, you will get burned. He played with Tom Wilson, and he got burned. The ending, though, left a sour taste in most of the Hurricanes. I don't know how bad, but he's definitely going to be out. Brind'Amour said, the game was over. Let's just get it over with. 2 seconds left. I don't like it, but nothing you can do about it. And take a look at Brind'Amour's nose. It's all jacked up from no doubt getting into a lot of fights in his career in the NHL. So should he really be one that's talking about being a peacemaker? Let's just get real here, Brind'Amour. Aside from the end game fireworks, the Hurricanes earned their first win over the Capitals this season in what might be a playoff preview in a month's time. And, I don't know how it's going to end up playing out this season, if the Capitals are going to end up playing the Hurricanes, or if they're going to end up playing the Panthers, or whoever it's going to end up being. But it's going to be a physical game. You know that. It was last time. And if you remember the last time the Capitals played the Carolina Hurricanes in their Stanley Cup run or in the playoffs there, what happened is Svechnikov ended up stepping up to Alex Ovechkin, who this young punk at the time, still is pretty young. And he wanted to take on Alex Ovechkin. And guess what? Alex Ovechkin knocked him out. Another one. I mean, you can't, these players aren't going to be like, no, you're too small. I'm not going to fight you. If you step up to a legitimate NHL player and you, in fact, are playing in the NHL and you want to fight, you get what you get. It's not up to the other player to say, I'm going to hold back. You shouldn't have stepped up to him if you didn't want to get hurt. Carolina scored the first 2 goals in the first 8 minutes, then ended the game with 4 goals to put the exclamation point on the dominating victory in Washington. We played more in their zone than in ours, which the games before against them, it really wasn't that. And finally, it felt like the first game out of those 4 when we play actually like our team. And it was a rough one for the Capitals because it was at home, and in the fact that the Washington Capitals beat the Hurricanes not that long ago. So there's no real excuse out there, but I mean, giving credit where credit's due, Carolina, they shouldn't be too upset about it. They won 6-1. It was a statement win, and they solidified their spot as number 1 in the Metro Division. So, I mean, kind of get over it, Carolina. You got what you want and you won. So it's time for you to move on. As of Monday night, the Hurricanes have a 1-point lead over the Panthers for the Eastern Conference's top spot, which in turn means a playoff date with the Capitals, who are currently in the final wild card spot. So that very well may be the case, and you better believe that is going to be a physical series if it's going to be the Washington Capitals versus the Carolina Hurricanes. You just better count on it. And if it's not, if they end up playing the Panthers, I mean, there's still some games here to shake out. We don't know where it's going to end up, but nonetheless, if it is the Carolina Hurricanes, the Capitals are going to have to bring their snarl and their physical game, because you know that's what Rob Brindamore dials up. He's going to dial up a physical game. And I don't want to hear any crying on the Hurricane bench if someone gets injured. That means you, Tom Wilson, listen up. Mantha, all you guys, Ovechkin, you big frames out there, you're going to have to go out there and eliminate them physically. That's the way it's going to have to be. Take them out in the corners. Do whatever you have to do. I mean, you don't have to get into a fisticuffs with these guys, but finish your checks. Work them into the corner. Whatever it takes to get the win. That's what you have to do. And the Washington Capitals have the players on the ice to meet that objective. There's no doubt. So that's what's going to be expected, whether it be Carolina or the Panthers, or whether it's the Carolina or the Hurricanes or the Panthers. It really doesn't matter. You're going to have that physical game out there if you want to maintain and move on past the first round, really. Because, I mean, let's face it, the Washington Capitals, who have been panned, this season, well, they might squeak in and make it to the first round or the second round. If the Washington Capitals have any hopes of moving past that, then that is what they are going to have to do. All right, after this, we are going to talk about Alan May. Yes, Alan May, the tough guy of the Washington Capitals, former tough guy, I guess. He hasn't played hockey for some time, but if you watch him on TV there on NBC Sports Washington, he still has that edge to him. You can tell he would still throw down with anyone, and to be honest, I won't want to fight him because I bet you he can still really fight. We'll talk about that. But first, check out Locked On Now. You don't need to go to the big networks out there. We have our team of local experts on Locked On Now. We have someone that covers every team in the NHL. So you don't need to go to the NHL network or ESPN or whatever big major news outlet you have in your region. Head to Locked On Now. We have people that are encamped with these players. There are experts on every team in the NHL. So head over to Locked On Now and be in the know when it comes to what's going on in the NHL. All right, in this final segment here, we are going to talk about what Alan May's thoughts are on fighting and just what in general, what is fighting. Does fighting have a spot in the National Hockey League anymore? If you ask me, I say yes. I think it absolutely does. I think that it can change how the game plays. Ultimately, sometimes you can have a team that's a bit sluggish to start out, but then you insert a big fight into the game, and it can really kind of turn the tide of how the game is played. The NHL has changed in many ways in its century-old history, but one part of the game that started to fade in recent years has been fighting. Dropping the gloves is synonymous with hockey, and particularly favorite aspect among fans. However, players just aren't engaging in as many on-ice scuffles as they used to. According to hockeyfights.com, the NHL is on pace for 297 fights this season. From the 2000 to 2001 to 13-14 season, the league only once finished a full campaign with fewer than 400. It topped out as high as 803 in the 01-02 season and finished 8 seasons averaging at least one fight in every 2 games. NBC Sports Washington studio analyst Alan May, who played in the NHL from 87 to 95, talked on Monday during Capitals postgame live after Washington's 6-1 loss to the Carolina Hurricanes about how small a role fighting plays in the 2022 version of the NHL. The fighting, the fisticuffs are almost done, May said. I don't know why they just haven't ended it versus letting it be allowed still, because the way they've done it, the referees are trying to keep guys from actually getting after each other. And while it's still in the rules, and I don't think that you would, be able to take it out of the game. How are you going to take it out of the game? Are you just going to throw a player out of the game if they get into a fight? And let's be honest here. Sometimes the National Hockey League isn't actually always burgeoning with viewership. So I think that if you can insert anything to give them an advantage to draw in people, if you're at the game, there's a multitude of reasons why you have to keep fighting in the game. If you ask me, it, like I say, it can turn the tide of a game. If you have a team that hasn't been playing well, sometimes if there's a big fight, it can change the way things are. And I've seen it happen even with the Capitals. Tom Wilson will get in a big scruff. And guess what? All of a sudden, the Washington Capitals are more engaged. So I think that it does have a place in hockey, not to mention the fans that pay top dollar to see a game live, or even the fans that pay top dollar to see it at home. They want to be entertained. And if that's what you're signing up to do, if you want to play in the National Hockey League, you know that there's fighting. So either get used to it or don't play, if you ask me. And I think it still does have a place in hockey. And who am I to say? But if I'm not playing out on the ice, but if you ask me my opinion on it, I would say that fights still do have a place in the National Hockey League. I mean, you don't need to be dropping the gloves at the drop of a hat, but given a certain situation, if you got a guy that's chirping you the entire game, that's in your face, that's just really mixing it up with you, getting in your ear, then I think that if you drop the gloves and just to prove a point, then I think that's okay. I mean, as long as the rules allow for it, I say game on. Being more physical now is when the puck is in play, finishing your hits, taking hits, blocking shots, winning puck battles. It's not like when I started and when color commentator Craig Laughlin played, where guys had constantly be prepared and ready to drop the gloves to swing momentum for physical payback and retribution, intimidation. Those are no longer parts of the game. And I mean, I like Alan May and I like Craig Laughlin, but in this particular example, I got to say I disagree with Alan May. I don't know what the case is there, if that's Alan May getting older, if that's just him having a different perspective, especially coming from a guy that liked to drop the gloves a lot. I think it still does have a place in the NHL. May's comments came after the heels of Capitals forward Tom Wilson engaging in a fight with the Hurricanes' Brendan Smith. Wilson made quick work of defensemen, but he was Washington's lone goal scorer in the game and spent 7 total minutes in the penalty box during the third period. So Wilson is far from a true enforcer who only contributes on the physical side of the game. His 21 goals during the 21-22 season campaign rank third on the Capitals roster. The NHL named him an all-star for the first time in the season as well. So, I mean, that's what I'm saying. I mean, Tom Wilson gets in fights and he's willing to stick up for his players. So if you got someone out there that's wanting to mix it up with a goalie, or if you got someone that's taken after one of the younger rookies, you need someone like that on the team that's going to say, no, not on my watch. And that's where you insert Tom Wilson or Hathaway or Ovechkin if he's really feeling feisty. Get them out there. I mean, who else is going to stand up for these guys out there? At some point, that needs to be done. But, like I've talked about, at length with Wilson, don't just call him an enforcer or someone that just fights all the time. He also has scored 21 goals. Most typical goons out there, see Ryan Reeves, those guys out there, they don't have the record to back it up. They're not scoring 21 plus goals a year. So that kind of puts Wilson in a different category. And that kind of just moves on from that. For May, he doesn't think it's worth the Capitals allowing players like Wilson and Garnet Hathaway to fight one-dimensional players and cost themselves chances to impact the game in other ways. And, that is Alan May looking at bigger picture. And I agree with that aspect of it. But it is more than just kind of a one-dimensional thing. It's about winning wars out there. I mean, sometimes those players out there, they're getting in your ear, they're shoving you, they're cross-checking you, they're throwing you to the ground. If your emotions spill over a little bit, so be it. This is such a small part of the game now, May said. I really feel like if you have one-dimensional players, they're just going to get you in trouble. If you want guys to fight, I wouldn't let Hathaway fight a one-dimensional player or Wilson fight a one-dimensional player and get them off the ice. I just laugh at them and try to make them minuses. So, and those stories were from NBC Sports Washington, but I think that was just kind of a knee-jerk reaction from Alan May. Like I say, that is a guy I think that would probably be willing to set down his beer and kick your butt right now. He's a bit of a short fuse. He was a good hockey player, but I mean, he's not really the kind of guy that I think that would say something like, I don't think there should be fighting in the NHL anymore. I'm kind of surprised to hear him say that, to be honest with you. Again, I don't know if that's him kind of looking at the state of affairs with the Washington Capitals and saying, hey, guys, is it worth it? Is it worth it to have some of your big guys sitting in the penalty box? I hear that, from Alan May, and hey, he knows more about hockey than I do. He actually put the skates out and played in the NHL. But as just from someone that observes the game, I can see the relevance and the importance of still having fighting in games. Like I say, someone's going to have to stand up for these other players that, for whatever reason don't want to stand up for themselves, or to kind of turn the tide of the game. Like I say, I've seen it happen many times before, and I think that the National Hockey League would be making a big mistake by getting rid of fighting in the National Hockey League. All right, that is this episode of Locked On Capitals. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. We hope to have Seth from Locked On Wild later in the week, so you're going to want to make sure and stick around for that. As you know, the next game the Capitals play is against the Wild on Sunday. It's going to be a big one. The Wild are in second place in their division, so it's going to be a lot like the Carolina game. You have got to be ready because you know that Minnesota is going to be dialing up a big physical game. You just know it. And now they have Marc-Andre Fleury in net. So we hope to have Seth from Locked On Wild later in the week, and we'll talk about the state of affairs for the Minnesota Wild, and we'll talk about the history between the Capitals and the Minnesota Wild. Generally speaking, the Washington Capitals are victorious against the Minnesota Wild, but we will talk about that. All right, after this podcast, make sure and head over to Fantasy Hockey. Make it your second listen. Host Steele Roden and Flip Livingstone help you become the expert of your fantasy league. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. So thanks again for joining me on this episode of Locked On Capitals. We will talk to you again tomorrow. Thanks for listening.